All right, so this machine right here is a bandsaw. And a bandsaw is used for cutting curves or sometimes even straight lines in a piece of wood. You can also cut plastic, and they do make metal bandsaws. So the different parts of the machine are, like most machines, there is a table. The blade is down here. The blade actually runs the whole way around. It is a metal band that runs the whole way around the machine itself. So you have to kind of support that band in several different locations. There are blade guides in a couple of different places on this machine. On the top right here, this is the upper blade guide, and that holds the blade on the top end from wobbling back and forth front to back too much. And then underneath, you can't really see it, but there's another blade guide underneath that does the same thing. To adjust this blade guide, on the back end, there is a lock over here. And then you can actually crank that up or down. The significance of this blade guide is actually, it's a pretty important part of the machine. This whole area right here covers the side of the blade so that if the blade does break, it stays inside of the whole machine right here. If the machine does not have a support on the blade right here, when the blade breaks, it can actually fly out incredibly quickly along the operator's right-hand side and then get sucked back into the machine on the lower drive wheel. And if somebody is standing directly to the right side of the operator, it could really injure a person. So you don't want to stand to the right side of the operator while somebody else is using this machine. On the top right here, there's just a wheel inside of the machine right here that guides that supports the blade. There is a upper and lower wheel guard. So here and down on the bottom, there is a guard that covers the wheel. And then other than that, you just have your on-off switch, and there is a miter gauge, or a distance gauge across the front right here. So to use this machine, you're generally going to want to have some sort of a line before you go ahead to use it. It's a guideline. And you're going to take your material and you can put it on the table. Now you need to adjust the height of the blade guide so that it is about 1/8 of an inch above the workpiece. Some people call it the pinky rule. And the reason they call it that is that you can take your pinky finger and you can put the blade guide so that the upper blade guide is just about touching your pinky finger. And that's a good estimate as to how high you want that blade guide on the machine. If the blade guide is too low, the wood can have a little bit of a warp to it and get caught in the machine. If your blade guide is too high, you can either pull the blade off of the wheels or you can break the blade, and those are both bad things to happen. So I have this line on my material that I'm planning on cutting, and you can see that there's a few curves in it, and it kind of follows down around through here. This particular cut, I'm not going to need any relief cuts, but a relief cut would be used if I have to make a really sharp curve along my material. I have to do something called a relief cut. And what a relief cut is used for is if that blade is going to have to turn too sharp one way or another, it'll actually pull the blade off the wheels or break the blade. So I can come in with a straight cut from the outside on the scrap side of the wood, and I will actually be able to allow the wood to break off where the relief cuts are and stop the blade from binding. So I can take this piece of wood and feed it into the machine, and I should be able to follow the contours of this curve because it's a pretty narrow blade. You'll notice that I didn't actually reach over and grab anywhere near where the blade is. There is a 2-inch margin of safety on this machine, which means that your hand should be no closer than 2 inches to where the machine blade is. So anytime your hand can get within 2 inches, you need to use a brush or a separate piece of wood to kind of poke something out of the way if it gets stuck. And you can actually see on this piece of wood right here that I stayed away from the line a little bit. And the reason you want to stay away from the line is because this machine sometimes is a little difficult to get a very precise cut. So then you can actually follow that up with some sort of a sander, and you can make your sanded finished edge on the sander to make sure everything's nice and clean. The one thing you're going to want to do with this machine, like most machines inside of this room, is when you turn it off, sometimes they don't stop immediately. Like this machine right here takes a good 15 seconds for the blade to stop spinning. Before you walk away from the machine, you want to make sure the blade has come to a complete stop. And the reason that we do that is you don't want somebody else to come along and just happen to bump it and cut themselves or whatever. So you want to wait the 10 to 15 seconds it takes for this blade to stop on the machine before you walk away. All right, so covering everything that we've covered, this is with the bandsaw safety video with Mr. Crompton.